Hello and welcome to the HellfireCast, the official HellfireComms podcast where we talk about random shit and you listen to it. I'm NTom64.
And I'm not NTom64. And we're NTom64.
Shut the fuck up.
Let's just ruin this HellfireCast forever. Hey, we've made this reference. Now you are forced to leave.
Yeah, he's the Helldragon, and today we're going to be talking about tone. Do you want to describe this topic a bit more in detail, Helldragon?
Basically, in tone in terms of how a story is presented in like video games, comics, TV, things like that. And I wanted to bring that up because it's been on my mind recently. One of the big issues that's been making the rounds lately is the Devil May Cry reboot. DMC Devil May Cry. I like how they said it twice, by the way. So basically abbreviated is DMC DMC or DMC squared, which is like sucking in stereo. I don't know.
I pronounce it Dumka.
Dumka. DMC! Because of the way it's like capitalized. But I mean, like, the big hoopla with that is the reboot has gone in such a drastically different direction. Like, original Devil May Cry, it was kind of serious at first, but then it sort of evolved in this goofy take. It's goofy, it's cartoonish. Dante himself doesn't take himself that seriously. It's supposed to be kind of fun. But then we have DMC here, which is like this really serious, trying really hard to be mature kind of thing. And I've been watching like the cutscenes and stuff like that, and I have to agree with a lot of the criticism in that the story is just kind of shit and not presented that well. But I mean, and when you take that into consideration and you see how much tone can take a part in this, and why I think that when you bring up tone, because some people have been blowing this off in terms of criticism for that game, when you bring up tone in a story, I think that's really important to consider and a legitimate criticism. Because if you screw up tone within a certain context, and it's very easy to do that with a lot of other stuff, which is also what we're going to talk about, it just completely throws everything off. And that's really one of the big problems with DMC.
Alright, calm it down.
You just keep saying it. I can't stop talking about DMC.
And the sequel, DMC Recursive.
It's just like a Mobius circle or loop. But, I mean, it's really easy to screw up tone, and that's what it feels like it happened here. They tried to present what was familiar in a different way. And it didn't work. It was shit. I still think it's shit. It's really hard for it to take it seriously when Mundus is saying shit like, I think at one point he calls Dante like a fuck child. Which is probably the best new insult I've ever heard. And it's kind of weird because you call him a fuck child, yet that's how children work. That's how they're made. So it's like, hey, fuck child. That's a thing that happened to you. It's just such a weird combination of words.
Yeah, and tone can be applied in many different ways. You've got, like, tone of character. For example, Dante in the old games was goofy, a bit of a show-off, and the new Dante is like a spoiled brat. You know what I mean? He's what teenagers think is cool.
Yeah, exactly, and it's just that when people are bringing this up in terms of this sudden drastic shift in how the story is presented, and a lot of people blow that off, I don't think they should be doing that. Not only because of, like, personal reasons, like, in terms of narrative, but I also think from a business standpoint, it's important to take tone into consideration. Because what you were hearing a lot from a lot of the DMC interviews and things like that is that they were really trying really hard to defend the direction they were taking, DMC, and there was a lot of blowing off of the fans who like the old style, but I really think that in an attempt to match a tone that tries to meet everyone's expectations, you're really sort of ignoring the kind of thing you've already built with your established fan base, and you ignore that at your peril, because if you do that and you try a different tone and it sucks, then you're fucked, as we see with DMC here. Now, I don't have any exact sale numbers, but people are lashing out over the crappy story and how the developers have been basically treating the fan base. So I'm just thinking that, sometimes when you screw up something like that, and you don't really take tone into consideration as well as you should be, you have to be prepared for what happens as a result.
Yeah, I don't think tone is the biggest problem with DMC, but I will agree about sales. From what I hear, it's not doing very well in both Japan and the UK. Not sure about America, though.
Yeah, I was actually reading some criticism from Japanese players about how they were just bagging the shit out of DMC, and not just in terms of gameplay, but again, also the tone. It's very easy to screw that up. But one thing I've also really noticed is that when you take an established franchise and you flip around the tone, people are going to be lashing out anyway. Now, there are some cases, I think, where it's successful, but once again, you have to get past the initial fan backlash. And I think, and like I said, they have a reason to backlash, because it's so easy to screw up. Take Batman into consideration. Batman has, like, a lot of different incarnations about him, and each one has a sort of different tone. Like, you have the early Batman, which is goofy, it was more Silver Age kind of stuff. Then comes The Dark Knight Rises, which is just completely different in tone, and the Burton movies, and later on supplemented by Batman the Animated Series. And then suddenly this whole new face of Batman pops up, and a whole different part of the fan base becomes familiar with that, and it divides people. That's weird about tone, especially, and how you have people who like different types of tone, and they basically start coming to blows over it, like which one is better executed, and things like that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of the animated series fans battle it out with people who like Brave and the Bold. Personally, I like both kinds of shows. I think that there is room for multiple tones in a franchise, but you gotta learn to take it as its own thing. Like, you can't expect Brave and the Bold to be as serious as the animated series. It's just not going to work. That's not why it was created.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm thinking the main thing I think why Batman has been so successful in terms of different tones, like, again, Brave and the Bold, and then the animated series and things like that, is, now this isn't always true, because it's still kind of easy to screw up what you're going for, but at its core, good storytelling, I think, supplements tone, and in fact can help support tone, even when it's drastically different. I'm thinking that Devil May Cry, DMC to the third dimension, would have been supported a lot better if the story was good. Yes, it's a completely different direction in tone and presentation, but if the characters weren't annoying shits and they weren't going around saying fuck child all the time, which is the best new curse word, fuck child, that's great, then I really think it would have helped it better. In Batman's case, Batman has had a lot of bad stories, in all ages, all tones, but it's had a lot of good ones too. A lot of people claim that, there's a lot of great stories in Batman the Animated Series. There's a lot of great stories in the Silver Age stuff. The Burton movies all had a great story. The first Dark Knight Returns, not the sequel, I've heard things about the sequel, that one had a good story. So at its core, if you're trying to approach something in terms of changing the tone, you also have to take the story into mind. And that's where I think Ninja Theory really faltered. Because who wrote that game? I was listening about this. They actually got a different guy that wasn't present in all the other Ninja Theory games to write Enslaved. And I know you really liked Enslaved a bunch.
Yeah, I love Enslaved.
And the thing about Enslaved, there's a part where this guy was relating this story about how he was writing a scene where Monkey was near this cliff, and there was like this slave dangling off, and the guy in charge, I think it was Taneem, the guy who was in charge of DMC, he had a point where it's like, well, why doesn't Monkey just push the slave off the cliff? Because it makes him look like a badass. And the writer was like, no, that would make him look like an asshole. So, because of that lack of trying to create a good story for DMC, that's where it really faltered. And that's why that helped contribute a lot to the backlash, I believe. And I really do think that if the story and the characters were a lot more solid, less try-hard and things like that, I think this shift in tone would have been a lot more appreciated and, well-received.
Yeah. What other media do we have to discuss in terms of tone?
Well, I know you wanted to bring up some stuff about The Legend of Korra and how you felt that the shift in tone in there was actually not handled very well.
Yeah, if you listen to, I guess you could call it a podcast, the little podcast me and the Gaming Brit did a while back after we'd finished watching Legend of Korra, you'll know how I feel about the tone and the story and how that was handled and whatnot. Basically, the Legend of Korra is meant to be, well, it's advanced both in terms of, like, time in the story, but it's also meant to be, like, slightly darker and a tad more mature, like, more for teenagers than for kids, even though it's broadcasting on a channel that mostly broadcasts to kids, but I digress.
Well, I just think SpongeBob is really more edgy than people give it credit for, you know? I think it's a really good coming-of-age story about all of us yellow sponges out there under the sea.
Well, you have a point there, because while Korra was falling to what may have been her death, SpongeBob was just there laughing it up like the Dark Lord that he is.
So that's where that came from. I was wondering, because I keep seeing all those, like, little bars of SpongeBob laughing over really depressing scenes. Is that where that originally came from, that Korra broadcast?
Yeah, this is actually a great example here of how you can completely shatter the tone and just ruin, like, whatever media you're trying to present. Basically, what happens is, I won't spoil the specific story details, but Korra's doing her, like, pro bending thing, which is a sport, for those of you who don't know. And the stadium gets attacked. Korra's doing her, like, bending thing, flipping about, and she gets knocked off a rope or something, and she's falling down, and suddenly, I don't know why Nickelodeon thought this would be a good idea, but one of those little stinger ad things with SpongeBob just laughing pops up on screen, like, SpongeBob coming in, like, half an hour, and it's animated as well, so you have the scene of Korra falling down to what may be her death, and SpongeBob...
I gotta find that clip. I gotta see if that's on YouTube, because I gotta see that now.
And SpongeBob's just laughing his ass off.
Now, I'm seeing here in the chat that, people were saying that since the makers of Korra only had like 12 episodes, that's why tone was rapidly jumping around back and forth. Do you think that has some merit, or do you think they could have just tried a little bit harder in their presentation?
Well, you'd think the tone would be more tightly focused if it was like just like a 12 episode series, like a contained story. But they have to balance like teen romance, some kind of weird genocide plot, a bit of racism in there as well, I guess, and they also have to get the kids in, so the tone can flip rapidly in the middle of an episode, and it's extremely jarring at times.
So you're saying that the best thing to do when you're really concerned about tone in a story is try to stick to one in particular, and not flip-flop back and forth so easily?
Either that, or I guess make the tone suit the situation without, you know, making it too jarring. Like, the Legend of Aang, which is what they call it here in the UK, I believe, although I think we also call it The Last Airbender, that had 3 seasons to tell a story. So when the tone changed, like when it got serious, that was believable. When there was a wacky situation, whether it because it was a filler episode, or just because they felt like telling a joke, that was believable. When it happens in Korra, a jokey situation can come right in the middle of a really serious situation, and it's jarring as shit.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, how that really throws off the story. So again, you know, story and tone really tend to go hand in hand more closely, I think, than a lot of people tend to realize. You basically have to get them both right and make your story arc as tight as possible. You can I do think, like you said, you know, in like the Avatar, where you can have your moments where the tone shifts back and forth. You know, you have like comedy relief, things like that, to buffer off the really dramatic moments. But especially in the small stories, like, say, a miniseries or a video game, you have to make sure they're all really integrated together very tightly. Now, another thing I'm thinking, when I think about tone, and I'm thinking maybe this is actually a situation where a tone shift actually affected things really dramatically for the worse, maybe. It's basically when I think about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
And we all know... Yes, let's all get our sides out of the way. Oh, Helldragon, do you really have to go on this topic? I thought better than that.
Just get on with it.
No, I mean, I'm serious, because... I especially bring that up because I've been reading through a lot of the Archie comics, and the Archie comics is the perfect example of how to fuck stuff up when you're thinking about tone, because you have to keep this in mind. Originally, Sonic was created, it was more of a colorful fantasy kids thing. Eggman, he had some form of threat, but he was very simple. He was supposed to be easy to draw for children. It was sort of poppy and airy and things like that. And then Sat AM hit. And I really do think that quality issues about the show aside, whether you think it's good or bad, I really do think that was the turning point in which Sonic the Hedgehog stopped handling tone very well. Because the early Archie comics, they had characters from, Sat AM and things like that, but they were more jokey in terms of, like the stories and things like that. They resembled more of the games. But when Sat AM hit, that's when things really started getting serious. They felt the need to start telling more complex stories. And I'm not saying that's bad, but then tone started really getting out of control. And you know this if you've been following along like I have been. The whole Archie Sonic marathon comic story time they've been doing on 4chan, which is where I've been following it from. And it quickly goes out of whack. Like, there's a lot of drama, a lot of romance, a lot of crying everywhere, and it just doesn't really fit in terms of Sonic. And I think since then, since Sat AM hit and introduced this idea of a really serious Sonic world, well, okay, maybe not super serious, because, they had their light moments, like a more serious Sonic world than it was supposed to be, I really do think from that point on, Sonic the Hedgehog has sort of tapered in terms of overall feel quality, in terms of how everything's presented, and things like that.
Yeah, and my negative opinion of Archie mostly does come from the dark ages of the comic, but the whole, romance angle, the whole political intrigue and discussion of that, with the whole, there's a monarchy, but they want a democracy as well. However well written these may be, and I have to give credit for the writers, because I guess from a certain angle it is kind of interesting, it just never interested me. Because I grew up reading Sonic the Comic, STC, that's the UK comic, and mostly it was just about Sonic fighting Robotnik with the Freedom Fighters. There was no political struggle, for the most part. Romance, Sonic pretty much didn't give a shit about Amy. He was really a sarcastic, cynical bastard, which was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Sonic the Comics, Sonic for that reason, pretty much.
Yeah, so we never had to worry about stuff like that. It may have got brought up from time to time, but it was never like the driving force. And so I could never understand the appeal behind the Archie comics. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
I don't know, some of them were alright, but I do think that, again, as the comic went on, this failure to address the whole tone, you have a story you want to tell, but a lot of times people don't tend to ask, should the story be told in this fashion? Does it fit with the overall feeling of the universe it's in? And let me bring up another Sonic thing to kind of tie that together. The Sonic fan film had a major issue with tone. A lot of the details were fine. A lot of good references to all of the various types of Sonic stuff. Sonic Sat AM, the originals, even, I'm guessing, a little bit of Underground, question mark, just looking at there a little bit.
Well, I think tone is the least of Underground's problems.
Well, even, with the film, a lot of the details were, good and in there, but they failed to unify, because I believe Eddie LeBron didn't look at the overall picture. You'll notice that tone is a very big picture kind of thing. And that does apply in all terms of storytelling, and you need to look at all levels when you're trying to tell a story. He failed, I think, to look at that big picture and ask himself, should the story be told in this way? And that's why, when the feedback came and all the criticism was coming out of the woodworks, they sort of had a point. Because when you're taking something like Sonic the Hedgehog and you're trying to apply all of these ideas to it without really thinking if that's the right puzzle these pieces should be fitting into, again, it's like bashing a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't really seem to work that well. That's why when all the elements mesh together, we basically got something that was pretty fucking goofy, all things considered. Maybe even more goofy than the original Sonic stuff, when you think about it.
Yeah, it tried to be so serious, it kind of, turned on itself and became goofy, because it was trying to take itself seriously, but no one else could.
Yeah, in an atmosphere, in a universe that was never really established to be serious.
Yeah, and this kind of happened in the games as well. I guess you could say from Adventure onwards. Now, I like Adventure mostly because it's about Sonic fighting a monster and, by proxy, Robotnik. There's a little air of mystery there in, like, you got to kind of, like, figure out how Chaos came into being, why he's doing what he's doing. But for the most part, it is just Sonic collecting Chaos Emeralds and fighting Robotnik. Flash forward to SA2, and you've got this whole shit about government conspiracies, this like dark, edgy Sonic, and a doomsday plot, and it just never really sat well with me. I mean, I don't mind Shadow, I think he's useless nowadays in terms of like plot and whatnot. I mean, he just stands around going, "You've got this, Sonic."
Exactly like that.
Yeah, and I don't know, the whole serious angle of Sonic storylines just doesn't work for me, which is why I found Colours to be a breath of fresh air. It doesn't take itself seriously. It has Sonic just fighting Robotnik, destroying robots in colourful environments, and as goofy as it may be at times, that's just how I imagine Sonic.
So I guess what I'm saying here, to sort of tie this all together, there's nothing necessarily wrong with having more complex stories and challenging whether something should be in a different tone. By all means, I really think that these people should experiment with that kind of thing. But I do think that serious thought needs to be put into place before addressing the issue of tone. Basically, you want to have some kind of overall feel that you want to keep in mind. And the more you think about that, and the more you think about how the story you want to tell fits in that universe, I think overall you can create something of better value. So whenever something like that comes up, like they're changing a different thing and they're trying to present it in a different way, don't let people just blow you off. If you say you don't agree with how it's presented, it's a legitimate concern.
And just in terms of like when tone is changed and whatnot, I think localizations and dubs would be a good topic to cover here. Just for example, one last thing from Sonic X. Now, I don't really care for Sonic X, both in the Japanese and English dubs, but in the Japanese one, you could tell they were, just like in SA2, trying to be very serious at times. In the English dub of this, they treat
Let's shudder a little.
They treat this very, very much like a kid's cartoon, even though the subject matter is trying to be serious, and it just comes off as really jarring and the bad kind of goofy at times. And oh my god, you know what, Helldragon? I can't talk about X. It is physically making me sick.
Yeah, that's sort of its special power, isn't it? It's like the sick gem you would equip for that thing. But yeah, that's basically what I had to say about tone. So, in short, it's a legitimate concern. So, if that ever comes up when you're thinking about, like, a video game or a book or a movie or things like that, don't let anyone blow you off when you bring that up. It's something that does need to be considered.
And I think all that's left to say is a bit of advice, really. And this is in terms of commentary here. When you're doing a commentary, and this is something I try to adhere to when recording commentary, you have to use commentary that is appropriate to the subject matter you're covering. For example, in Super Mario 3D Land, Datai, my co-commentator, is a very analytical, just straightforward kind of guy. So I copied his style, his tone, so our commentary styles would mesh together. With Helldragon, he is very jokey, again, very analytical, critical, so I guess...
Not that funny sometimes, though.
Yeah, well, I copied that to a T, so you're okay there.
Well, you kind of double copy that, don't you? You're kind of copying it a bit too much. Can you, back off a little bit?
But yeah, we complement each other that way, because the tones are identical. Again, with FTA, we joke around, we give information. You just got to be appropriate for the situation. And when you're not, you create a clash, and it just does not work, which is why sometimes commentators can come off as obnoxious because they're not letting their commentary fit the situation.
When the dark side of commentary rises.
For example, PewDiePie, when he starts randomly talking about barrels for no reason, and this is in a horror game. It doesn't work because he's trying to be comedic in a situation which is trying to be serious. Now, you can diffuse a situation, a serious one, by being comedic, but you have to really be funny, not cringeworthy, because again, that clashes, and it just really is obnoxious.
So basically it all comes down to story again.
I suppose this part, or this podcast rather, could be tone and storytelling.
In a way, yeah.
Anything else to say or address before we move on to question time?
Well, I don't know about you, but I thought the barrel-busting minigame in Street Fighter was pretty frightening, so I can see where PewDiePie is kind of coming from here.
Indeed. So, if people in the chat would like to give us some questions, we shall answer those before signing off. Tom, ever consider commenting on Sonic Battle? Well, I've only really played about 5 minutes of Sonic Battle, and personally I didn't really care for it. I'm not sure if like a fighting game with a story would make for the best playthrough. The next one after Generations is most likely going to be Sonic and the Secret Rings, because I kind of wanted to do 2 good Sonic games and then maybe a couple of bad ones. What's after Secret Rings? Well, you'll have to guess, but I already have something in mind for that.
Oh no, I played Sonic Battle for a bit, and I really think that if it was more like a Smash Brothers clone, I might enjoy more. But it uses that weird kind of 3D final fight kind of movement, which is really hard to land attacks with, and I fucking hate it. Any Pokemon playthroughs in the future?
Should we tell them?
Should we?
Yeah, I think we should. Let's not leave an air of mystery here, otherwise there's no point in even bringing up the question. Helldragon and I would actually like to do a playthrough of Pokemon X around November or so.
Well, whenever it comes out, yeah. Thinking about it at the moment, yeah.
I'd like to do it a month after, just so you've got time to play it, I've got time to start recording footage and whatnot.
Well, I mean, let's see what comes up, because, again, there are a lot of other games we were looking at, and a lot of the other movie comps we were thinking of doing and things like that. What's your guys' opinion on Dragon Quest? Well, I love Dragon Quest Monsters. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I fucking love those games, man. Like, it was so cool. Like, you had the ability to not only breed every monster, but you had, like, so many monster combinations to choose as a result. I really like the first game storyline. Even though the dungeons weren't that good, I do like the first game storyline where it's like, oh man, these assholes from this other kingdom kidnapped your sister. You gotta go get her. And you go work up all the way through the ranks, and it turns out your sister was actually trained by the opposing kingdom to fight you in the big monster tournament. I'm like, what the fuck, dudes? I'm gonna kick your ass.
So basically, you like the Dragon Quest series.
Well, I like Dragon Quest Monsters. I played Dragon Quest. I've beaten Dragon Quest 1. I've played 2. I got, like, stuck. And this was the dark days before the game FAQs, and I didn't have any money to get, like, a strategy guide. So I was just... I fucking gave up on that one.
Tom, what do you think of the cancellation of Young Justice? Why is it that everything I love dies, Helldragon?
You have great rage in your heart.
Welcome to the Red Lantern Corps, motherfucker. Fuck Cartoon Network, basically. And you know what? I had just gotten into Green Lantern as well, and they fucking axed that. Fuck Cartoon Network.
Yeah, that's really too bad, because I heard there was some... Like, I haven't actually watched Green Lantern, because me watching TV, but I heard they had a lot of good ideas for Green Lantern, and they had Sinestro in there. And what they were doing lately with Sinestro in the comics, making him sort of like an anti-hero, like a villain with some good moral sides. I love characters like that. So if he was written like that in the cartoon, I would have been all over that, personally.
You know, Sinestro in Green Lantern, the animated series, was actually voiced by Ron Perlman.
Really?
Yep.
Ron Perlman's one of my favorite underrated actors, I think. He does a lot of great roles, so it's always good to see him and stuff.
In terms of the DC animated universe, well, that's a whole different thing, but DC animated shows, he was Slade in Teen Titans.
Yeah, and he did a really great job, I think. And a lot of people seem to agree that... See, Slade's original name in the comics is Deathstroke the Terminator, and that's such a shit name that I actually think Slade is much better. Slade, his name is, I'm trying to figure out Deathstroke's original name. Something Slade. Of course I don't know his first name, because clearly that's unimportant.
Well, Deathstroke, ironically, just turned up in Young Justice.
Oh, great. He's not hunting for fucking ultimate weapons, is he? Grimacing at shit?
Who knows, but the moral of the story is fuck Cartoon Network and the live-action bullshit they're putting on their channels.
Here's one. Are you guys staying on board or jumping ship after Kingdom Hearts 3? Man, I fucking jumped ship already. That shit. I'll probably come back for Kingdom Hearts 3, though, but I really don't want to do any other Kingdom Hearts games. I don't like it anymore.
Well, I think they're just talking about it in terms of being a fan.
I'm not a fan. I fucking hate that stuff now. But again, I did like doing, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, because, I mean, they had their good points and they had their bad points. They were good commentary material. So again, I'll probably come back for 3 and I'll just mock the shit out of the story and, say some begrudging words of respect whenever they come up.
What kind of plans for HFC Versus do you have in the pipeline?
We have some pretty good ones.
Mostly involving netplay, so we're just doing some experiments with that right now, and that's all we have to say.
Yeah, he's got some shitty games he wants me to play. Those are always fun.
Fuck you! What do you think of Resident Evil Revelations coming to consoles and not the Vita? I thought I'd add that little last bit myself.
Not the Vita, the fuckers.
It's so funny, they can put it on a 3DS, and the reason they don't put it on the Vita is because, the resolution isn't right.
No, you say the reason, but you have to add the heavy, bolded, italic quotes around that word, because we all fucking know Capcom lies out of its teeth anyway.
Yeah, that's through its teeth, Helldragon.
Well, that's implying it has teeth to begin with. Probably sold them to make more money. Slade Wilson, that's his name, I'm sorry. I don't remember that shit clearly, thank you.
Yeah, and also, obviously you have Deadpool, who is Wade Wilson.
Oh, there we go. See, we're mixing up a lot of Wilsons these days. I don't know why. Oh, well, because Deadpool is based off of Deathstroke. All right, I'm going to sit down now. I was standing up the whole time. No. Helldragon thoughts on Persona 4 and its spin-offs. I only know of the one. Oh, wait, no, Persona 4 Arena. It's pretty cool. It's like the only Persona I haven't played it, but I do like the characters. I watched a playthrough. I really like the story and the mystery, and of course, I really love the Persona 4 dub. And it's probably the closest thing we have to Part 4 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so that's always good.
Yep. Let's go for one last question. So, come on, people, let's make it a good one. How about that Power Rangers Megaforce?
Well, from what I saw of Samurai, and I didn't watch a lot of it because, I don't watch Power Rangers these days, but the acting was pretty fucking horrible in Samurai for what little bit I watched. Like, these guys, fuck, I thought Tom was a bad actor, but these guys, well. So, hopefully they kind of get some better talky people from Megaforce, but what I do know is that the Sentai they're adapting is Goseiger. And I believe after that, the characters on that one are directly going to go to Gokaiger, which is the 40th anniversary of Super Sentai. That means, and I don't know how this is going to work with the American adaptation, but you should not only be seeing suits from all the Power Rangers that have been adapted, but also the Super Sentai that have never been adapted before. Like the really early 80s ones, including a really cool one, I think, called Live Man. So that should be really interesting to see how that turns out.
Megaforce kind of looks mega cheesy, to be honest. I watched a clip of, the whole morph...
Well, it's Power Rangers. Are you fucking surprised?
Fuck up. Don't piss on my childhood, okay?
I'm totally unzipping. Here I go!
But yeah, it looks cheesy, but then again, that's Power Rangers as it's to be expected. I'm not sure how to feel about it. I'm also not sure how to feel about them using Go-Go Power Rangers, like the theme, and just the phrase in general. Because I was okay with it for Samurai, because it was the first series that, after Saban came back. Now it seems a bit out of place, like it doesn't fit with, again, the tone of the situation.
There we go, see, we're tying it all back now. You guys have learned something tonight.
And I think we're going to leave it here, so thanks for listening to the HellfireCast, and we'll see you all next time for more irrelevant bitching. See you then.